Good morning. Day 26 of our 30-day challenge. And yesterday we celebrated a federal holiday, Memorial Day, here in the U.S. And one of the things that we talked about was how this feels like a simulation. And I thought to myself, because I've been hearing this theme a lot lately, and so I thought to myself, what if life is more like a video game than we realize? And for those of you that don't play video games, this might be hard to understand. So I'll run through it step by step, because we've all played games, not necessarily video games, and so we know that every game has rules. Every game has patterns. Every game has levels. Every game has consequences for not following those rules or patterns. And these games have rewards. When you go through certain levels, you can accumulate your mushrooms. I remember playing Mario Brothers. And every game has distractions. And every game has a mission. When I played games back in the 90s and late 80s, we would always try to fight the King Koopa. And that was the mission. And you kept on going until you achieved it. And of course, that was the enemy. Every game has enemies. And every game in those levels, each level was different. It was designed to teach you something different, to expose you to a different element. And one thing that was very interesting to me is when you play different games, all these things are different. And so whoever made the game, they also had cheat codes. And you can only get the cheat code by going to certain people who had mastered the game. And the most interesting part is the people who made the game. I've watched some of these videos that talked about the people who designed the games. They knew every possible outcome. I think to myself, what if God is our intelligent designer? And what if everything that we are perceiving and experiencing is just part of what the player does, and we're just players experiencing this uncertainty of life in this game? Because remember, when you first play the game, most games at least, it feels unfamiliar, it feels confusing. When something new comes up, you panic. If you have resources, you waste them in the beginning, you go down dead ends. And I've seen people play and they get emotional. When they lose, they get emotional, not knowing it's just a temporary setback. You can just do it again. It's just a game, is what they say. What if we treated life like that? And how come when you see more experienced players, they move with a certain sense of calm? Because I think they understand something that beginners, children, and novices don't. It's that the obstacle you face is where the lesson is. In other words, the difficulty you encounter contains the lesson. The boss battle, that's not proof that you're losing. It's proof that you've reached a new level. Because when you get to the boss at the end, that means once you defeat him, it's on to a new chapter. And I would always get excited once we got to that end and saw the boss, because that meant I get to go to a new level. What if we looked at life like that? What if we looked at life and saw resistance and knew, okay, this means I'm climbing, instead of this means I'm on the wrong path? And if you notice in the game, it gets harder as you climb. The resistance increases. And nobody is going to fight the big boss in the level 1. You have to keep going. And then at the end, and I look at that and say, does that mean that difficulty is the proof of advancement? And if we tie this into what we read in Scripture, James says, "Count it all joy when you meet these trials." James 1. Knowing that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. So your faith has to be tested. And it sounds crazy until you understand the game and how the game works. Because the trial is not there to destroy the player. Sometimes that trial, it comes out to upgrade the player, to determine if this player is worthy for the next level. And video games teach us something else. You can't level up. You can't go to the next level by playing safe. Because the beginning feels safe because the enemies are weak. It's so easy. You know, you're having fun. You're killing everybody. But I think that's just training. Because also in those first levels, you don't get the big rewards. And in life, we want the expansion while emotionally remaining in the small spaces. But remember, every meaningful upgrade requires us going into unfamiliar, uncertain, and what appears to be unsafe environments. Expansion into new territory requires new risks, new responsibilities, and a new type of thinking. And even fear works the same way, because in games, they give us these dark rooms. In those places when it's about to get dangerous, the music changes. And then those attacks start to happen. But as you get experienced, the player realizes that the fear is not as big as what's actually in front of you. The danger is not that big, the actual danger. And life is so similar because the things that we avoid, they're not really deadly. We talked about that earlier. They're just psychologically unfamiliar. You know, public speaking, starting a business, starting a family, starting a relationship, changing your identity. And we all know by now, you should, that the brain treats that uncertainty like danger, just like in the game. But that's where the growth is. And in the game, when you fail, that's the information. You know, good players, they don't interpret the failure as an emotional rejection. They study the patterns. They come back and say, okay, this is what I did wrong. I got to do it again. Where was the trap? What timing did I miss? What behaviors am I not aligning with? What strategy should I use? But in life, we do something different. We fail and we repeat the same loop without thinking about it, without reflection, without meditation. You know, you go through the same relationship, the same guy, the same girl, the same woman, the same financial habits. You're overdrawn this month, overdrawn next month. Same excuses. You're fat, you're lazy. Same environments. You're still smoking, you're still drinking. Same self-sabotage. And at some point, we got to be wise and say, this game is trying to teach me something I keep refusing to learn. And we know that there's nothing new under the sun. We keep repeating patterns because most people, we never stop long enough to study life. And there's something else that these video games reveal. What you focus on determines what you notice. Because when I used to play, and then I would watch one of my friends play, they played so differently. They would notice things that I would miss. They would notice clues, hidden doors. I remember we used to look for resources. They would notice those. They would notice how the enemy behaves, weak points, shortcuts. And it's because they pay attention. And I was just playing the game emotionally. And maybe reality is constantly revealing clues, but because people are distracted, we miss those. The conversation, the warning, the people you meet at parties, the door closing, the door opening, and even our deeper intuition. The signs are always there, but if the player is not paying attention, they'll miss them. And every game has these distractions designed to waste time. without producing progress. Because usually they have a timer, and those little distractions, it's just amazing when you think about it. Side missions, random wandering, and we do the same thing. We engage in doom scrolling, I think is what it's called. Constant feeding of the eyes with Instagram, with social media, with TikTok, whatever it is they have going on. Minutes disappear, which turn into hours, which turn into years, which is all potential. And all the while, the real mission of your life is untouched. So let's stop wasting our moves. Stop wasting our lives. The player who believes victory is possible, they keep moving. They keep trying. So let's think about that for a second. How does this relate to our life? Because if we look at life as a video game simulation, and we look at God as the mighty creator that knows all possible outcomes, I think we can safely say that it's always going to work out for us. We can safely say that no matter what decision we make, it will always work out. And that's why our expression of faith, our walk of faith, has to be different. We can't pretend like there are no enemies. We have to move knowing that God has designed this game with those enemies to strengthen us, to reveal something in us. Knowing that there's still a path forward. And this is not to make us feel bad or to torture us or to confuse us, but it's to develop wisdom, courage, discipline. And the winning that we think is money or status, it's none of those things. The winning is becoming the type of person capable of handling the level of power, money, peace, purpose. And when you understand this, even those painful seasons have meaning. The setbacks become training. The delays become preparation. And the resistance becomes development. Now those days of uncertainty, we can look at them as exploration instead of panic. So what level in this game are you currently resisting? Are you currently fighting? Are you spending most of your energy on distractions? And what fears are you fighting just because you're on a new level that seems unfamiliar? And if you truly believe that this growth was possible, how would you approach today differently? So the declaration that I'm making today is that I will stop fighting every obstacle as something sent to destroy me, and I'll understand that these obstacles are meant to build me. Resistance means growth. And we have to pay attention to the patterns, the lessons, the opportunities. And let's not waste life distracted. Today we'll choose courage. Today we'll choose purpose. Today we'll choose awareness.